Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, MC Carol Klassen, for your welcome. Thank you especially to Janelle Self and Courtney Kay for your invitation for us to be here this morning. Before I begin, I need to mention a few things. Spend a little bit of time prepping you where we're coming from. Diane and I are both ministers in the United Church of Canada. We have and continue to spend a lot of time doing pastoral care in hospitals, care facilities, and private homes. We are both part of your healthcare system, providing spiritual care to your customers. We both have the greatest respect and admiration for all those who provide health care for those in need. No matter what the situation, we have always found the care people receive to be the best. The following is not a critical view of the healthcare services in Regina Qu'Appelle Health Region. It is one family member's private journey while his wife was in your care. Diane's family doctor noticed that Diane had an irregular heartbeat while Diane was having a physical test last year and had referred Diane to a cardiologist for further tests. Diane took the test and awaited further advice. Just a few weeks before the heart event, Diane received a letter from the cardiologist advising her that there appeared to be nothing wrong with her and nothing out of the ordinary, and that an appointment was made for her in November 9th of 2016 to discuss further treatment and the possibility of a pacemaker. While preparing for this presentation, Janelle suggested I watch the last presentation that was held here on YouTube. That presentation was on December 3rd, 2015, with Lynn Reban, a Wascana Rehab resident, assisted by her daughter, Lori Garczynski. A few of the nuggets that I gleaned from Lynn's presentation were: 1, in healthcare, customer service is a bad word. Healthcare is the epitome of customer service, where the patients are your customers. Healthcare is our system, not just yours. Prior to going into ministry, I spent approximately 35 years in the Canadian airline industry as a passenger customer service agent throughout various locations in Western Canada. First with Canadian Pacific Airlines, then CP Air, Canadian Airlines, and finally with Air Canada. So let me quickly ask you, how many of you have flown in a commercial aircraft? How many of you have been on a flight that was delayed for any reason? How did you feel as you waited to find out what was going on? Waited for information that would tell you when things would return back to normal for you. Let us now watch a video presentation. That was a miracle on December 23rd, 2015. That happened to my wife Diane at St. James United Church. However, let me walk you through our journey through the healthcare system after the video story ended. I received a telephone message on my cell phone from Laura telling me to get to the General Hospital because Diane was en route by ambulance after having a heart event. I immediately advised my employer and was given the rest of the day off. I rushed over to the emergency department of the Regina General Hospital. I went into emergency entrance and waited for one of the staff to ask me what I wanted. And when they finally did get around to taking care of me, I asked them where my wife was. And I told her that my wife had just had a heart event and was being taken by ambulance to the Regina General, and provided my wife's name. She quickly looked in her computer and said she was not at Regina General. I asked if she could see if she had been taken to the Pasco Hospital instead. I was told to use the house phone on the far wall behind me. I walked over and called the operator and asked her if my wife was at the Pasco Hospital, and was advised that she was not there either. I then tried calling the St. James United Church again. However, I only received the answering machine. I did not have Laura's cell phone number at that time, so I waited. After a few minutes, which seemed like forever, Laura's husband and daughter arrived. He immediately asked me how Diane was doing, to which I had to reply that no one seems to know exactly where she is. He did confirm that Laura had told him that the ambulance was taking Diane to the Regina General, so we waited. I called our daughter Allison to advise her of the situation. She said she would be down as soon as she could. I then called our son Jeff in Prince George to advise him of the details. Both calls were very hard for me to make. After a few minutes, there was a PA announcement in the emergency area that a code blue would be arriving in 5 minutes. We both thought that this must be Diane. When the ambulance arrived, it went into the covered garage area. Again, we did not know if she was actually there. After a few minutes, one of the nursing staff came over and asked me what my last name was and said that my wife was just being taken down the hallway. She asked us to follow as we snaked through the emergency corridors to an empty room. We were asked to wait for a few more minutes while Diane was being transferred from the ambulance stretcher to a hospital bed. And just about this time, Laura arrived to be with us. A social worker did come by while we were waiting and said that she would be back later to answer any questions that she could. She actually came back 3 more times that afternoon. However, always seemed to be too busy to spend any time to answer any questions, and there really was no quiet place for us to talk. Several minutes later, I was cleared to go into Diane's room. There she lay, unconscious. All kinds of IV lines from 2 machines and a breathing tube in her mouth. Her tongue was sticking out of her mouth. It appeared to have been bitten and had been bleeding. I was informed that Diane was breathing on her own. However, the breathing tube was there to assist her to keep the oxygen flow in her body. So I waited. Bells going off and alarms constantly sounding. Staff coming and going to reset the various machines. Now, I stated earlier that both Diane and I frequently visit hospitals. However, we are not familiar with the various pieces of the medical equipment and what they are supposed to be doing and are doing. This is our health system. However, only you know what the treatment plan is. No one took the time to explain the situation, to tell us what was happening, what your plan was for Diane. After a while in the emergency department, a nurse came to ask questions about Diane, her medications, allergies, and the like. Unfortunately, until that moment, I did not know many of the answers she needed. We had been married for over 11 years. However, I only knew a few things about Diane's medical history. I was the older one in the group. I had all the ills and pains, and we always knew what my problems were and what my medications are, but we didn't know about hers. She asked if Diane had a living will, to which I responded that we had both done our wills the year before, and we both signed forms that we did not want to be resuscitated. Whatever our wishes were, the use of an AED had bypassed all those. I said I would try to get some medical information for her. And when Diane's daughter arrived, she did not know many of the details that they needed. However, she was able to provide some information. Fortunately, I thought and called Shoppers Drug Mart, where Diane gets her prescriptions, and talked to one of the pharmacists. And he told me that he would email her patient profile if I could provide an address. When I had the email, I tried to find somewhere to get that printed in the hospital. No one had access to a computer that I could email the information to. Finally, in a little bit of desperation, I asked security, and one of them reluctantly let me send it to his email account so he could print it off in the hospital. The printed copy then was given to the in-charge nurse, and she placed it on Diane's file. So there we waited for the next 7 to 8 hours for Diane to be admitted to cardiac care unit. Bells and alarms constantly going off while they tried to stabilize Diane. Finally, Diane was admitted to CCU around 9 p.m. I called Diane's sister in Prince George to let her know and to let her tell her mother, 89-year-old mother, what Diane was going through. When we went in to see Diane after she got settled again in CCU, one of the first questions the nursing staff asked me was, why didn't emergency start the cool-down process? Sorry, I don't know what the cool-down process consists of. The next questions involved Diane's medical history, the same information I had obtained for emergency. Somehow it seemed that it was attached downstairs but never made it upstairs to CCU. Finally, CCU started the cool-down process, so I left for the night, not knowing if Diane would live or not, and in what condition she would be when she came back to consciousness again. Christmas Eve day was spent with Diane's daughter sitting by Diane's bedside. Allison even picked up some decorations for Diane's room. Later that day, the CCU staff said they would be starting the rewarming process. I asked if I should be there when she came out of the process and was advised by the CCU staff that they would let me know when the time had come. I could also check with them directly on her process at any time. The morning of the process was to be complete. I was told when I called that Diane's rewarming took a little longer than they expected. However, after a few hours, I received a phone call to tell me that Diane was conscious and that she was doing great. So I called Allison and her daughter and our daughter and picked her up and headed over to the hospital to see my great wife. When we arrived, the nurse advised that the neurologist had just arrived and was talking to Diane. We both watched in the background and were totally unprepared for what awaited us. My wife, who was doing great, according to the nursing staff, appeared to be confused and was having difficulty remembering the answers to the simplest questions that she was being asked. We were shocked and upset to see Diane like that. I wondered what Diane would be like after her recovery. Was she even going to recover? And if she did, what should I do? Before I headed to the hospital, I called the relatives in BC as well as in England to tell them that Diane was doing great. Now I had to phone them back to tell them there was a bit of a hiccup, a correction. We advised that during the next few days that Diane would be going for some tests on the following Monday, December 28th, to check her heart and the arteries. Further treatments would depend on what was found. And so Diane's son flew into Regina to be with us and his mother. When Allison, Jeff, and I arrived on the 28th in the afternoon, we advised that the tests went well and an implantable cardioverter defibrillator, an ICD, had been implanted. Unfortunately, due to the time of the year, the tests that were required for Diane and the machine could not be done until a week later on the following Monday before she could go home. During Diane's stay in the CCU and later in CSU, she received the best of care to my knowledge. The staff in both areas were fantastic. One of them finally took the time to explain what the various machines were doing and some of the readouts, but don't ask me what they mean now. While waiting for the tests the next week, Diane received a visit from a cardiologist. He introduced himself and said that he was going to be her new cardiologist. During the next few minutes, he asked her who her family doctor was, and Diane didn't know what to say. She was already under his care for about a year. The name of Diane's GP was on her chart. Needless to say, we are both not filled with the greatest of confidence in his care. Diane passed the test the following Monday. She was told that there was no damage to the heart or blockage in her arteries. That appeared to be Diane's electrical impulses to her heart were not working properly. Diane was advised around 2 o'clock that she could go home. However, she would now have to wait until the next morning, as her cardiologist had already left for the day. When she phoned to tell me that she was so upset, I was so upset, to say the least. I said that I would call the cardiologist's office to see if there was something could be done. I spoke to the receptionist and politely, in spite of myself, explained his displeasure. She said she would see what she could do, and a short time later Diane called me back to say that she was now cleared to go home. I could come and pick her up. Diane's progress has and continues to be a good, however, at a slow pace. She was back to work February 18th, however, cannot drive for at least 6 months after the event. SGI even sent her a letter requesting her driver's license back until her recovery. I quit my job and now spend my days driving Miss Diane. Now she is home from the hospital. Who do I turn to with questions? We were told that the cardiologist would call us to make an appointment for Diane in about 3 months after her discharge. We were also told that Diane could call her, make an appointment with her GP about a month after getting discharged. We saw her GP without any problems. However, we had the cardiologist office had to phone 3 times before we finally got an appointment. When Diane finally saw the cardiologist, the cardiologist said to Diane that her heart event was a complete surprise to him. We have been to the cardiac device clinic for an appointment since her release. If we have any questions, they refer us to the ICD implant specialist / cardiologist, Dr. Omar Sultan, not Diane's cardiologist. He said that Diane has cardiac fibrillation and has prescribed some new medication. On our journey through the health system, Dr. Sultan is one of the brightest spots on our horizon. He talks to us, he listens to us, and discusses the suggested treatment to follow, even giving us choices as to what we would like to do. Even getting in contact with him now recently, however, has been a bit challenging. We have left 2 messages for this office to call us back, and we are still waiting. Diane now has occasional dizzy spells. Is it her medication, or is she simply prescribed a combination of pills and they're not sitting well together? She sometimes has a low energy level and gets fatigued during the day. Is that the medication? During a recent visit to Diane's GP, the doctor noticed Diane's heart still had an irregular heartbeat. Do we need to be concerned, or should we assume that the ICD is doing its job? Our health system works fine when you're in the hospital, when the healthcare providers have a plan for each situation while you are in their care. However, what happens to us when the patient goes home? As a family member, a caregiver, who do I turn to for help? After all the things that we have been through, I feel that I have some sort of PTSD. Shortly after Diane's return home, we were watching a movie one evening, Captain Phillips with Tom Hanks. It is a very intense movie. The movie was okay. However, at the end of this movie, there is a hospital emergency scene. This really upset me like I've never been before. I became very emotional. It was like reliving my time in emergency all over again. Even now, some of the TV shows that I used to like, I now find too upsetting or too difficult to watch without becoming emotional. Sometimes I wake up at night and remember the heart event all over again. In my 35 years of passenger customer service with the airlines, the major issue that led to customer complaints was not knowing, not being told what was going on when a situation occurred, even being told that we did not have information to pass along was always appreciated rather than total silence. The frontline staff in the RQHR health region are, from my perspective, stretched to their limits at times. Unfortunately for us, your customers, they do not have enough time to tell us what is going on. One last question for you. Assuming that most of you, if not all, are covered by dental coverage by your employment, how many of you would make an appointment to go to your dentist every 6 to 9 months? And once you arrive, just sit in the dentist chair while the dentist and the hygienist work in your mouth without knowing in advance what they're going to do. X-rays being taken, freezing needles given, drilling going on in various teeth as well as other procedures. And then when you're finished, you pay your bill and go home, waiting for the next visit. Not very likely. Why should your healthcare system be any different than your dental care? Tell your customer what is going on what you're going to do, or what you are doing. Spend some time to reassure us that we are being looked after. And if you don't know what is going on and you don't have the answer, tell us that at least you will get back to us and let us know when you do. Thank you for your time and for your attention.